Hello, you're watching James. My name is James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Well, it's been a while now, and I've had this Hamilton on wrist. I've been enjoying wearing it, and it's now time for the full in-depth review of it. And I also want to talk about the sort of differences in the size of the two variations that are available. This one here is the 38mm. There is also a 42mm. And when I did the first impressions of this watch, I was a little bit unsure of which one that I wanted to buy. Obviously, I ended up buying the 38mm, but has that been the right one for me? Now, guys, if you buy this watch, there are a few different prices out there on the market. If you buy it direct from Hamilton, you're looking at over 900 Australian dollars. But if you look on the grey market, you can pick them up for around about $700. And if you're going to spend $700 up to $900 on a watch, you really want it to be the right size and you really want to be happy with it. So I'm hoping I can demonstrate a little bit to you whether or not this might be the right size for you. And guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I really would appreciate it if you just click on that little subscribe button. It makes a huge difference to me and the channel. But let's flip the camera around now and let's check out this Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic in 38mm. So here is my Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic H70455133. Comes in very nice packaging, comes with the timber style box, as mentioned in the first impressions, not actual timber, but it certainly looks a bit like that and it certainly presents the watch very nicely. Now, I did technically buy this one on the used market, however, it was in new condition. However, the clasp on this one appears to be not the original. It has either been replaced or swapped out by the previous owner. Not quite sure why that has occurred, or if perhaps maybe it's just an older version which had the bigger clasp, but I'll sort of talk about that when I get to the clasp there. Now, this one, if you are buying it brand new from the Hamilton website, selling for 975 Australian dollars. That's a fair bit of money for a watch, but it is a Hamilton and it is directly from the website. If, however, you're going to be buying it off the grey market, you can pick this one up quite regularly for around 700 Australian dollars. Well, you're getting a really well-made field watch. You're getting a watch from a brand that is sort of well-respected, well-loved, and known so well for their field watches. And I very specifically chose this watch, or this version of a field watch, because I love the look of it. And I was a little bit concerned about the sizing, however, because this does come as a 38mm, which this one is, and it also comes as a 42mm. And I thought, well, the 42mm is probably going to be a little bit big for this style of watch. I wasn't sure which one to go for. This one came up on the market first, so I've bought it. And I have to admit, I think it's probably the best option between the two, especially for my sort of medium 6 3/4 inch wrist. And also probably this style of watch, this field watch, this 38mm is probably a better fitting for this style of watch. But what are all the other dimensions? Because it actually is 38mm when I measure it. It is 11.3mm thick, which is a nice thin on-wrist sort of presence, which is very appreciated. 47mm lug to lug, 20mm lug width, and on this bracelet, with possibly the wrong clasp, size to fit me, 121 grams. And the thing that attracted me most to this watch is the dial. I think this is a beautiful, amazing, well-designed dial, and they've pulled it off very well. Because field watches in general are a fairly simple sort of a dial, which I've got no problems with simple dials. I like them. I think they look very neat and stylish. However, this really does pop something a little bit extra because of what they've done. And what have they done? And I'm going to try and capture this in the light here in the studio, but there is a couple of different dial finishes. In the center there, we have a center circle, which is sort of more of a sunburst type black effect. That is surrounded by a ring where all those sort of 12 through to the 11 numbers are. And that's on a ring that is sort of lots of little, very, very small concentric circles. So small that from the naked eye that you can't actually really see it. I'm going to stick a picture in here. I was able to get this one off the internet. And on this picture, you can really see those concentric circles. But to the naked eye, you can absolutely not see them. What it does actually provide you with, though, is another sort of finish. It almost looks like another type of sort of matte, or possibly even sort of a slightly shiny finish. It also shines and picks up the light. So it's not about seeing the circles, it's about playing with the light a little bit differently. Then on the outside where that sort of minute track is, it reverts back to what is similar to the center there and continues that slight sunburst black effect. And those sort of differences in the dial textures and looks really do make this watch. And what is on the dial of this watch? Well, everything that is on this dial is printed on, and it is either printed on in white or printed on in lume, because there is some reasonable lume on this. Not perfect lume, but it is quite good. I guess whilst we're talking about lume, let me throw you in a lume shot here. You can see that there's those little pips at the hour markers that are loomed, as well as those numbers, the 12 are all the way around, and obviously the hands. Now it does last reasonably well, but it's not a dive watch, so I don't expect sort of that style of loom or that sort of quality of loom. But everything you can see there, as mentioned, printed, all the loom. We've got those dots which you would have seen there that were lit up. There is a minute and second track all the way around, 60, 5, 10, 15 all the way around. Inside those numbers there, as you can see, were loomed, and 24-hour numbers internally within there. Hamilton, Khaki, Automatic, and because it's a Swiss-made watch, they're throwing the Swiss-made there either side below the 6 o'clock little dot. Absolutely beautiful. Hands are all polished stainless steel. As you saw, there were lume filled in the hour and the minute marker. They are needle tipped, which is very nice because it just extends those hands out, pushes out over that minute or second track. Very nice to see there. Nice long stainless steel second hand, tiny little counterbalance there, and a flash of red on that arrow on the second hand. Does push quite far out onto that second track as well. And if you know me and you know the things that I like out of watches, one of the things is nice long hands, especially the second hand. It's nice for that to reach out to the second track so you can see it overlap or at least meet up with it and look really good. And this absolutely does that. There is a date window at the 3 o'clock. It is not color matched, which is a little bit of a shame. It does mean it does stand out a little bit. I think it would have been fantastic if it was color matched, because black would have continued what is on the dial. Then the numbers would have been white, which would then have fit in with the other numbers. So there's a bit of a choice which I was a little bit surprised about, and it will mention in my likes, dislikes, changes later on in the video. And that dial is all covered by a double domed sapphire crystal, which is very nice. I love how it's a nice gentle doming and it comes really nice out of that solid bezel there. Now I don't think there's any AR coating. If there is not a lot. As you can see, it does sort of get disrupted by the light a little bit. You can see the light play with my studio lights here. The majority of this watch is all brushed, and I think that is a perfect choice because it really does suit the aesthetics of this watch. But there are 2 points that are not brushed. The end of the crown, which is a high polish with the Hamilton H there, and the solid stainless steel bezel insert is also all polished. The rest, as mentioned, all brushed. Has a circular brushing on the top of the case, and it transitions immediately into the case side profile, which has a lovely fine brushing. Nothing to complain about in the quality of this watch, especially the brushing. Now this watch contains the H10 movement, which has an 80-hour power reserve, which is absolutely wonderful. It also has hand winding. As you can see, it is not screw down, but it also has hacking, which is lovely, especially for a field watch. You really want to be able to get it exactly on time. And thankfully they've chosen to put a see-through case back onto this watch, which is fantastic because it is actually quite a nice looking movement. There has a custom rotor there with Hamilton written on there. You can look through, enjoy it. As you can see, all brushed on the back as well, which I do certainly appreciate it. But whilst we're talking about that H10 movement, let's check it out on the time grapher. Well, there's a reasonable set of figures, aren't there? Beating at 21,600 vibrations per hour, 0.4 beat error, which is not perfect, but anything under 1 is acceptable, so I'm okay with that. Nice healthy 300 amplitude and running just below 0 seconds a day. On wrist, I'm really noticing that it is not really losing time at all, which is lovely to see from this watch, especially since the power reserve is 80 hours. So for that whole 80 hours, it's not really losing much time at all. Now the bracelet on this watch is a bit of a standout feature for me. Firstly, nice solid end links, fits very well into the case, transitions really nicely as well. Female end links, so it drops away from the case very easily. It is a 4-link system. You can see those 2 internal links are separated. I I can actually move them a little bit for you just to show you, see how they actually move a little bit. So we have 4 separate links, which is lovely. All brushed on the side. It utilizes split pins, which is a little bit disappointing at a watch at this price. Screws would have been better, but there is actually quite a nice taper as well, starting off at 20 millimeters, going down to 18 millimeters. Now, as I did mention, I am not 100% sure if this is the correct clasp, or perhaps an older clasp or a replacement clasp, but it is a Hamilton clasp, and from a quality perspective, I can certainly say it is very, very nice. This one has 4 micro adjust, double pusher, all milled interior. My understanding of the clasp that should come with this one looks exactly the same, but it's just a little bit shorter with 2 sets of micro adjust. And that actually would suit the watch a little bit better, because as you can see, this clasp is almost the size of the watch, and that probably doesn't suit the 38mm size of this watch perfectly. The smaller clasp would have been better, but definitely the quality of it, absolutely beautiful. All brushed, and just nice. Hamilton stamped in there on the top. And how does this 38mm look on my 6 3/4 inch wrist? Well, I think it actually looks rather nice. This sort of size I think does actually suit my wrist. I think it sort of fits and sits really well on wrist, partly because of the thin case diameter there, or thin case depth, which I think is very nice. Has those slightly longer lugs, so it does tend to take up a little bit more of my wrist, which is good because I like a watch that tend to be a little bit bigger. So this sort of is kind of the perfect fit. I do appreciate it, I do enjoy it. But what do I like about this watch? What don't I like about it? And what would I change? Well, as mentioned, I love the dial of this watch. I think it is fantastic. I think it's a great blend between sort of traditional field watch, but a bit of a modern interpretation, giving it a little bit more bling or maybe a little bit more pop. And I absolutely think a standout feature of this watch is the overall fit, finish, and quality. It is a beautifully well-made watch, and it's noticeably beautifully well-made when you handle it. Movement, absolutely wonderful. A very good movement, a very well-running movement, but also having an 80-hour power reserve is a really usable feature to have on a watch too. What don't I like about it? Well, I don't like that it didn't come with the correct clasp, or at least this particular watch doesn't have a clasp that sort of suits it perfectly. That's not this watch's fault, and I doubt that if you're buying this watch that you're going to come across that issue. But what would I change? Well, I do keep talking about 2 things. Firstly, would have been good to have the screw links. That's a little bit of a shame. At a watch this price, I really do expect more than a split pin system, because really you want it to feel a little bit more elevated, because you are spending a little bit of money on this watch. And I know I do mention the size a few times, and I've mentioned positives about the 38mm, because I do think it suits this watch, the style, and also my wrist. And I've mentioned that it comes as a 42mm as well, which is great to have that opportunity to have a different size or a different variation, especially if you've got a much larger wrist, but I don't think that's the right size. I would absolutely love for them to bring out a 40mm version of this, however, because even though I do like this size, I think I would love the 40mm version. Now, at this sort of point in the video, normally I flip the camera around and do some final thoughts, looking at me. However, I'm going to do the final thoughts in this section because I want to show you something. And what do I want to show you? Well, these watches that just magically appeared here, and it's because of the sizes. Now, yes, people are going to say this is the perfect size, and they're probably right. Even though I'm saying it'd be nice to have a 40mm version, perhaps even if I had that in hand, this would still be the right one. But I just wanted to say, this watch here, my Seiko, this is just over 39mm. It's about 39.5mm. And if you look at them side by side, it's only a little bit bigger, but imagine this watch in that size. Equally so, this Glycine, this is a 40mm watch. It's not a big watch, but again, imagine this in that size. I think it would just take it to the next level. Or perhaps that might just be my own opinions, because I do particularly like this sort of size of watch. I like this size of the watch, but I do really like this size of watch. But that might be my own personal opinions. Apart from that, it is an absolutely wonderful watch. The quality of it is outstanding. It really is exactly what I expected from this Swiss brand Hamilton. Really impressed by it. Really enjoy wearing it. Really enjoy the quality of this movement as well. It does bring it up to that next level. Okay guys, that's it for me today. Going to finish off the video now. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Love to hear your comments about this watch. And do you think I'm a little bit crazy wanting it a little bit bigger? Leave a comment down below. Hope to see you in the next video.